Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the PCS Championship here for the summer playoffs to round out your year. My name is Eric. I'm joined by Nightstar as always. Sponsored by CWC Bank and China Airlines. Before the match starts, I want to thank Riot Games, Carry Live, and Garena for the full operation and production. And Nightstar, here we are yet again. First time of me joining in on the playoff race, considering we've already had 3 of the round 1 so far. And we're going into a final part where we get FAK Esports who have dropped down below, and Impunity, of course, who are making their debut today as well. So looking forward to it, considering that, as I said, we've already had our start of playoffs, and it has been, I guess, everywhere we've expected, apart from our first series to open up.
Yeah, things feel as expected after the last series where things kind of come to the norm, but certainly, again, day 1 in the playoffs where J-Team did fall to the lower bracket was a bit of a stunner for a lot of our viewers. And, you know, at the very least, they did bounce back in a very strong way yesterday.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they maintain that form moving forward, because that's just the biggest question about J-Team. They can really just fade in seemingly the most random moments.
I mean, I had a lot of questions about them finishing off the season. We'll bring that bracket up in a second if you're just tuning into the PCS for the first time, because J-Team were a team that were expected to be better against Beyond, right? I think Nightstar, you were the only one who actually predicted Beyond to go through the first round. All of us, you know, amateurs here, sitting back, the rest of us casters, getting it wrong somehow. I was surprised at Beyond Gaming's performance, but more so the fact that J-Team still had a lot of questions to answer. It's good against Better Falcon team that in the second and third games of yesterday, that there was a lot more convincing gameplay.
Yeah, they really responded strong in games 2 and 3, and this is the form that we expected to see coming into the playoffs that they just didn't deliver in that first series. Moving forward, of course, that's what we want to see continue to happen. However, today it's FAK Esports who also did get knocked down into the lower bracket against CFO. CFO, they came out in a really strong fashion, and they kind of dominated the series as a whole, even though FAK, I would say, did look pretty good.
Yeah, they had some really good moments, right? I feel like for FAK Esports, you know, what's better to say? We had such convincing gameplay from some of the star carries and the solo lanes, but yeah, CFO still holding that high bar with people like Mission Rest, like especially Gemini being one of the best jungles of the split for a reason, being able to move forward up against PSG. But double elimination here, a very similar format for any LCS viewers as well. Now we're in the lower bracket, and now, of course, Nightstar, we have to look at Impunity versus FAK Esports, because, as you said, FAK come down to the lower bracket. We have to find out if they can survive, because against Impunity, there's a lot of surprises of the experience on this team they're facing off today.
Yeah, the starting lineup coming in from Impunity is going to be really loaded with a lot of veterans. But I think, all in all, for us on the English broadcast, it's pretty straightforward. It's just FAK Esports. There's just way too many question marks for Impunity. We don't know how their development has been going in the past 2 weeks. And even when we did see them in the regular season, it was just such a musical chairs situation that if you can't settle on anything, that never promises anything positive when it comes to postseason.
The amount of roster shuffles we've seen from Impunity, you're right, it's just been, you know, almost hilarious. Like, we can talk about it as we go into the series. Of course, as you said, predictions in front seem pretty simple with everyone going FAK Esports. I did get Clement Chu as well to tell me that he says he thinks it's going to be a 3-0 to add on top. And I have to say, I'll put the same score down here, Nightstar. Because for FAK Esports, the aggression, the bloodlust, like, this team is so much fun to watch. And against Impunity, when they're still trying to shake up what is their best roster format, you have to think that for FAK, it's not only the quality of play, but it's also the fact that they have been running with the same roster throughout their split, apart from, you know, we got changes of Rebirth and coming in over carries at some point, but apart from that, Nightstar, like, it's been solid otherwise.
Yeah, and those 2 subs were just kind of a blip in the radar, right? It was just simply 2 games, as we're going to see. It's going to be FAK Esports. It will not be Rebirth starting, so it will be carries, and of course, the highlight of this roster are really just all 3 of their carry players. YSKM, Pretender, even Eminem at times have really delivered all across the split.
I think supporting staff as well, right? That's what makes the carry so good. You know, we can talk a little bit about carries and Hollow in a bit, but coming to your point to full fruition about that man in the top lane for sure. All split long, the new top laner here for Frank Esports has been the big talk about, because this ex-IG Young top laner, this Mini the Shy, people are calling him, you know, Hong Kong the Shy. YSKM has been the focus, and Nightstar, a lot of the game so far, we've seen Frank Esports early ganks towards the top side to get him rolling on some of his volatile bruiser picks that he will prioritize early in the draft.
Yeah, and the big pick for him that we will most likely see almost 100% pick ban in this series is going to be that Fiora. If left available, he will just straight up pick it, no questions asked. And even when that does get taken off the table, he'll fall back towards the Jax, who has pretty much good matchups all around. You can really only look to neutralize him. And against everyone except CFO, it's just been an absolute pub stomp in that top side.
That's why it's going to be hard for Jackpot here today. Remember, it came in halfway through the split over ICU. And ever since they've committed here, is speaking of committing Alex, Apex, and Annex, we get the 3 X's together on the Rift once again. And we talked about this a little bit before, Nightstar. This split, Impunity has been between rosters, changing out for people like Husky, LZ there as well. Winnie's been in the bottom lane. We've seen a little bit of Nature in a couple of games too. It's just been musical chairs for Impunity.
Yeah, and that's what makes Impunity such a hard team to predict right now. But when it comes to our lane comparison, it will be the mid lane. Pretender, a very fresh face to PCS against Apex, a very grizzled veteran, has a very deep champion pool. That will be something that we expect to see flexed in some shape or fashion during this series, and Pretender really just all out showcasing his mechanical skill in these team fights particularly.
You were talking a little bit about Apex with the Zillion, might be seeing a little bit of that today as well. Ziggs has popped out from him too, while on the side of Pretender, things like Yone have come up. A couple of the Swain games as well, which is undefeated on as we enter pick a ban. Now, Frank Esports, being the high seed here, have chosen the blue side to start off. And Nightstar, as we know, even though it is 12-14, blue side, is still very potent here with what's on the table.
Yeah, blue side is very, very strong, and Frank Esports, they actually go ahead, ban away the Yuumi, and they ban away the Poppy. So big first pick worthy champions that I would say when it comes to the blue side approach. And for the side of Impunity, as mentioned, it's going to be that Fiora. They also take away the Sylas and the Ahri, so removing the Sylas, I think, helps them out considerably, because then you don't have that Sylas stealing away the Zillion ultimate, or really denying you a lot of the extra power in your ult combinations. And for Frank Esports, this is a pick that, you know, we still are going to see on 12-14 that has vanished on 12-15. It is that Kalista.
Yeah, it's amazing still with the Zeri up and available. It looks like Frank Esports going to give Eminem his second most played champion instead. So for Impunity, normally it'd be them on the red side banning away things like Poppy. Of course, I find it strange when blue side teams ban this pick, but it must be a different jungle approach. However, Impunity, Nightstar, even with being able to get the first pick jungler here, I was going to say, won't head that direction. But we get the Wukong in the end alongside the Azir, which for Apex has also been his most played.
Apex getting the Azir is going to feel quite good for him, as well as the fact that they've now kind of denied Pretender's best 3 champions. He's played a lot of Sylas, played a lot of Ahri. Those are probably his best ones, and the Azir's been banned quite a few times against him as well. So take that off the table now. We're kind of getting down into the extra stuff that we haven't seen Pretender play a lot of. As Frank Esports, they go ahead, lock in the Mumu. We see a lot of these melee supports coming out for the side of Frank Esports, mostly just because of the fact that they aren't so willing to go onto these enchanters into the hands of carries. But as expected, we get the Jax.
Yeah, I mean, look, with YSKM, his most played champion. It's left available. He will always blind top. Like, in the game versus J-Team, in the first game, sorry, not J-Team, it's called CFO. Frank Esports game 1 red side, it was second pick Camille without knowing top lane matchup. They know it's going to be about YSKM. They don't care who they're versing. They'll take any lane matchup as we actually get a Varus here as well. And Nightstar, this is something we started seeing on 12-15. The on-hit Varus has come through quite heavily. Well, when I say heavily, you know, more plausible than before. So I'm kind of curious to see how this gets partnered up as no support yet picked up for Impunity to go with.
Yeah, Varus, one of those champions that has been taken in sort of the same vein as the Ashe. You have a relatively strong laning. You also have the ability to engage from the bot lane position, which is not super common when we look at our available or meta champions in that role. So going into the second phase, Impunity, they've taken away the LeBlanc, one of Pretender's champions that he did showcase during the CFO series, and I would expect maybe even second ban, maybe take away the Vex, who has the potential to just dive into the backline and blow up Annex on this Varus pick, or you know, perhaps they try and remove one of the jungle champions, but most likely I feel like it has to be in mid lane.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? You did talk about, you know, the focus should be on Annex in this series, so getting rid of some of that mid lane threat pressure further to your point that could threaten the Varus is quite big. As I love this ban. I was going to say before, Nightstar, Brom thwarts everything from Frank Esports, so there's a really good ban to partner up with the Varus, which back when Varus was meta was such a good pairing. So I want to see what else comes through, because right now, maybe some setup for Engage for Impunity, Nightstar.
Yeah, maybe some sort of engage or some sort of denial here. The Nautilus would still sort of fit in that role, especially when you are diving so heavily. You're bound to just get really a lot of impact out of the Nautilus ultimate, landing on multiple people as it traverses its way into the backline. Now Frank Esports looking to pick up jungler, of course, with the Sejuani taken by Impunity. It does give great value over to the Trundle pick, and it also allows you to play a little bit more early game centric as well.
Yeah, it's the best duelist in the game, right? Especially against Wukong. Q nerfs the stats in the early game. That level 3 trade is just brutal, as we get a scaling mid laner for Pretender as well. And normally, you know, we talk a little bit about Pretender on the Sylas, the Ahri, things that are a bit more passive like this Victor. Only been seen a couple of times, so a different direction this time with Frank Esports. Put more focus maybe on the bottom side. But Nightstar, before we talk about their composition, Impunity, they're going to get part of that engage we talked a little bit about. So with the Varus pick and a bit more range added in, run me through how Impunity want to drive this game number 1.
Yeah, this composition feels very much pick-oriented during the early mid-game, with the tools provided by the Sejuani, with the Wukong ultimate. Of course, early on, the Azir tends to make plays more aggressively with that Azir ultimate rather than more of those defensive shuffles that we might see later on into the game once there's more damage threat onto him. And then, of course, there's the Leona, always looking and fishing for those picks with her own ultimate. So a lot of engage power coming in from Impunity, really all 5 positions, right? And for the side of Frank Esports, it's going to be about playing the ranges, right? And playing around terrain, because they do have decent area control with the Mumu ultimate, with the pillar. They have some tools to work with, along with, of course, the gravity field coming in from the Victor. And it's about mostly just focusing on the side lanes. Pretender on the Victor, we saw it only once this split, but when we saw it in last split, it was all about him just kind of farming up and just making sure he scales, and not really about roaming at all.
You know what it screams to me as well, like for Frank Esports, so focused on the laning, as you said, for everyone. To me, I look at this and I'm like, okay, bot lane needs to snowball ahead. Top side, you're looking at the Jax matchup, who late game will be unmanageable in a side lane, but getting the ball rolling for Frank Esports never looks so important, and we know that Frank Esports are a composition that can do exactly that. The early aggression that we've seen so far, the brute force of some of the fights we saw against CFO, as we're down in the lower bracket where you're fighting for your life in the PCS Summer Playoffs, it comes down to some pretty great comps in game number 1. where we can talk a little bit about it as we get onto Summoner's Rift. Now, Impunity as well, further touching on what you said, Nightstar. I want to add in my 2 cents that we have a nice front to back here, right? We have a
Yes.
Varus, it's lethal tempo, range versus Callista in the late game. A lot of crowd controllers you already alluded to, but adding the range of the Azir in as well. Front to back seems easy. Team fighting in large environments with the engage you also added in. So a nice point there when Impunity are a team that, let's be real, I think we've had a lot of doubts considering the roster's been changing all split. And there's been some crazy plays in the first 15, 20 minutes as we've seen so far.
Yeah, and Impunity, with how much engage and how much CC they are packing into their composition, it can help alleviate some of those communication problems of having such a roster that hasn't spent enough time together, where their calls might be super split up. At the very least, everyone has the ability to just say, "No, I am stopping this member in particular." And that might be something, to keep track of in the game. Maybe they accidentally just unload all of their CC onto one target. Most likely just Jax, right? Hopping into the backline. But if that's the case, that's also, a point of concern moving forward.
Yeah, it is, especially when we look at all the disengage as well and the tools from Frank Esports. Junglers starting on opposite sides of the map for now, though, as Hollow's blue heading on down to that bottom lane we talked about, while Alex might be looking to mitigate the top side, especially since YSKM, a lot of teams would have this approach to the game plan at Nightstar, that Frank Esports early on want to set up the top side. We've seen such early ganks there for YSKM because he's always playing things like Jax, Camille, Fiora, like very volatile side laners that can take over games when they're ahead.
Yeah, and when you know you're playing up against Frank Esports as
good timing. Yeah, Apex does have shifting sands available, but it might be a flash needing to be burned. They get him, and Hollow doesn't need to touch a thing. So summon it down from the mid laner of Impunity as Hollow just stops by to say hello.
And that's just punishing basic sort of lane mechanics. The wave's just too far up, but YSKM in a similar situation.
Yeah, speaking of, his flash might have to be burned in a second, trying to get this shove in, but timing not great here from Alex as YSKM. Never mind. Forget what I said. There's going to be a counter-strike, though, and that's going to get him out. So Alex, unfortunately, not pulling the trigger. YSKM now getting away with knowing the jungle is angled.
Yeah, Jackpot still level 2. Alex went in for that play. And with that large of a wave as well, yeah, he just really wants the Jax to back off in this case.
Yeah, saw the ward as well, just realized the Len's going to spot it out, so adding threat on in while Hollow starts invading the bottom side, but no camps available. You can see Frank Esports, this is what we're talking about, Nightstar, getting the ball rolling early. Apex in a bit of trouble with flash.
Look at the dive.
Why not, dude? This is Frank.
Yeah, Apex, no flash.
Get out. It all relies on the E. Pretender stepping up for a good little burst of trade. He's over the wall of the Raptors. Love the play. And Apex thinking with a 5-head there and avoids Frank Esports with the dive.
Plays it pretty well. Unfortunately, he has burned quite a bit of his resources, so no mana is going to force at least a recall. And that's going to allow Pretender to hold on to his teleport if he wants to. Should be able to just walk back into the lane if he chooses to do so.
Now I know we're still 12-14, but that is the dragon change of come from LPL. Moving to 12-15. I'm so glad it's such a smaller patch because adjusting between the two would have been so rough. But I know the weight of dragons here, especially when we have a Callista, a Mumu lane here, Nightstar. So kind of curious to see how Frank set up for this early one, considering they've already got deep wards in the bottom side jungle. Going to be spotting out Alex as he moves down, and it's already because Impunity have had to move, had to make the roam, considering that it was Frank Esports who almost made the dive before. So Vision's bit of tug of war here in the bottom side river further to my point, and we'll just have to see if Alex is able to get any kind of response to swing the favor of pressure from Frank down here.
Yeah, as things stands, all of these lanes in a very comfortable spot. YSKM down a little bit of CS, but he's just constantly shoving in, so he's able to get resets off when he wants to, if he chooses to do so. And the biggest question, of course, in this bottom lane, because that is going to be that dragon lane, whenever you do have a Callista, you're looking to stack early dragons, and that should be what Frank are looking to do. It's just a matter of carving out the vision to set up for a safe take, or have the wave set up in a good position.
Because it's pushing it for them now as well. So for Frank Esports, having bot lane under control. Hollow now pinging towards the dragon as well as he heads back towards the bottom side. Alex is towards his top lane, but there is another good ward in the Tribrush. YSKM, excuse me, is not playing overexerted up here. Is doing pretty good as, there you go, Dragon just going to be started up, and Pretender's got priority in the mid lane as well, Nightstar, so this looks pretty easy.
Yeah, Hextech Dragon going to feel very, very nice as well. 4 champions like Victor, like Jax, like Kalista. Going to feel incredibly powerful on them.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, the timing as well, right? A lot of the time, what we see in the PCS and LPL, we get Dragon aligning with the Herald. It's swapping one side of the map for another. Impunity right now are going to get pressure with Demolish up on the top side, meaning plates, but Herald's not up for another minute 30, so it's not like you're losing that much here from Frank Esports, as they knew that YSCam would be the target. They knew all along when Hollow was setting up bot side that Frank Esports were for once not going to give priority to their favorite top laner.
Yeah, going for the straight recall there. They don't end up showing Apex and Annex or Alex in that situation, but surely they had an inkling where the pathing was going to go towards, and that's allowed them to steal away this blue buff as well. So great sequence of events for the side of Frank Esports, and for Impunity, who have looked to be quite a very slow early game team. This feels pretty much par for the course, and it's going to take a lot of effort in this mid game to see with these extra playmaking tools what they can do with those.
And let's talk about like how they get there, right? Because at the moment, it is a 10 CS lead for each and every lane apart from the top side. Good trading here from Jackpot, but YSCam is okay with this flash and ulti available. Look at the timing here as well, as Jackpot has the wave crashing in, but Hollow's here to say hello. Still has his Q available, so Hollow's just going to get the push up, but mainly giving pressure to the top side, because Nightstar, we have 15 seconds towards the Rift Herald, and Frank Esports with this massive wave crashing in. Going to be able to time it so they get something around the Herald if they so choose.
Yeah, it doesn't look like they are looking to get right onto that objective here. And it's mostly just prioritizing, making sure YSKM continues to just get better backs off. Of course, he's running the Corrupting Potion, even though healing or sustain has been nerfed with potions. When you are running the Corrupting Potion, it still allows you to go for multiple resets as long as you get the waves in the particular spots. You're just going to have the sustain advantage regardless. And now we actually see the lane swap coming through, bringing in the Kalista, bringing in the Mumu up top side, knowing that, hey, Herald's up, let's lane swap, because now we have the extra objective control coming in from that Kalista up top side.
It's just so different, right? Because a lot of teams will move their whole composition up towards a Herald, but this is an utter and complete lane swap, as you said. As right now, Impunity aware the Herald's being started, but Alex is waiting in the brush. The wave is pushing against the turret. Impunity are not doing anything here. No contest, nothing. So bot lane's going to be stuck in the 2v2 top side, while Frank Esports are still the ones to get Herald. And remember that Nightstar, Hollow is stronger. He's now got the Subjugate, and he has the one with more CS in this game. So right now, you're pretty confident as Eminem might be walking in, but Alex has pulled the trigger. Solar Flare down. Cleanse flash away, but look, here's the backup. Now with the flash carrying the two-man ulti, the re-engage. Impunity thinks they can win
Pretender's
it, but
here.
Pretenders moved up first. By his side is Apex, but will it
go
matter?
For the shuffle.
As Houston's the next target. Chaos Storm used on the support, but Frank Esports got what they came for and more with First Blood and a huge gold boom.
They get themselves the Herald, which of course has the extra local gold attached to it, and they also get the First Blood. So that's a lot of gold coming into the hands of Frank Esports. They'll get that extra gold boost, and now look to utilize that Herald to further snowball that lead. Pretender coming up, getting involved as well with his pathing. Does limit Apex's playmaking capabilities of trying to get behind them and shuffle them into his team.
I mean, it's rough, right? You know, we talked a little bit about the early game of Frank Esports. Bottom lane is staying top, by the way, as YSKM is just stuck at the bottom lane. But Frank Esports with the 2k gold lead, and you look at those CS differentials, 15 towards bottom laners. Mid lane is up massively now as well. And hell, even YSKM is trailing on the back of Jackpot, who's had a lot of pressure from Alex this game, but that Wukong jungle hasn't been anywhere else and hasn't been able to initiate a successful play, as we've just seen in the top side.
Yeah, and the other thing is YSCam's sort of voluntarily giving up some resources as he looks for a bit of a trade here, and he knows that eventually he will outscale this Sejuani. It's just sort of a matter of time, and it's just about, okay, nice little move there, dodges out onto the ultimate. It's about getting to that break point in time.
Yeah, for YSCam, I mean, look, again, different position to what we're used to, but still super easy to see how it progresses as the rest of the map finds success. Second Dragon up, though, and for Frank Esports, again, we look at this bottom lane. It's a Noon Quiver Kalista, as 4 members are down here, but Alex and Yusin go in early. There's a shuffle back from Apex. It's great, but Carey's almost with the ulti. He has to buy time. He's out and now waiting for the re-engage. Ulti's back up and available. Chains of Corruption doesn't connect, and the Solar Flare down too. Run away. That's 3 ultis. Impunity need to get out as Eminem starting. The ulti from Carey's is good. Alex with a re-engage, but you shouldn't have returned. A double kill, a pillar, and Impunity are getting torn apart as Eminem returns to prime status, opening this playoff game.
Oh my lord, hysterics! We were talking about, hey, Impunity, they've got so many of these initiation pick tools, and we'll see how they work around those tools once we get into that early part of the mid game where they have all of them available. And I gotta say, the first look, not too promising.
Yeah, numbers advantage. So look at the replay here, Night Star, because if you do like, okay, we have numbers, but yeah, the wall's the first part of the problem.
Yeah, just misses Eminem on the edge of that wall, and while, you know, they didn't get hard punished for that situation, now Pretender's here, and whenever you have a Trundle, you're so good at chasing misposition or overextensions with that pillar and having that extra move speed. And of course, once Kalista starts autoing, she never lets you go.
And I mean, we talked a little bit about the range, but you know, Apex and Annex aren't at that point where the range matters. There's still as good again, but the Herald's still going to get the charge, and that's going to be some shared gold. Actually, it just only goes to Hollow in the end, so more gold here for Frank Esports as after that play, 3,000 in their back pocket, plus a double dragon. So now going aggressive, and Impunity are still trying to contest this Night Star. I'm worried it's going to go from bad for worse if Eminem joins in, and over the blue buff, I mean, Killer again, Alex caught out, Hollow jumping in, subjugate. Impunity doesn't have enough damage yet. The blast cone now sent to his friend as Annex is running alive, but Apex getting poked off the side. This is not their jungle anymore. Impunity are running around like headless chickens at this point. And okay, on to Pretender. There we go. The pick potential you talked about. He flashes away, but it's a Hailstorm. Turn around the pillar. Keeps Yusin in it. And just like that, Frank Esports walk out alive.
Yeah, and that was just one of those situations where Pretender, he walks a little bit too far for it. And maybe if they weren't as far behind as they were on the side of Impunity, that would be the kill conversion, where they have the extra damage to be able to pop a Pretender in that moment. But Frank Esports, they just continue to get more and more on the map. They get that blue buff, they get the top camps, and now they're going to get that bot lane tower for first brick. And things are just really playing everything to Frank Esports' comfort zone. They're not being forced to do anything that they don't want to do. And that's the core issue with this Impunity roster, is that because they, you know, don't quite have enough time under their belt, they're just too slow to put Frank Esports off kilter.
I mean, going for the fights as well. You know, this early on when Chains Corruption misses, you know, we get Solar in the back line, but how do you get there? Because your range doesn't matter at this point with the lack of damage. And for Impunity, watching this early game play out, Frank Esports now in such a great position because of what they've been given, and it's almost a 2-item Callistic here, as Annex has just picked up a Mortal Shield Bow. They're going for second Herald, but everyone from Frank on the map, YSCam is committing to the bot lane, however, and even if you get this Herald, you might lose in a turret in the process, as Frank Esports are still looking for the 5v4.
I don't know. I don't think they should go for this. It's really just about buying as much time and being as annoying as possible, as that will be, you know, them securing an objective bounty at the very least, but they lose priority onto this mid tower. They're already getting a bunch of damage down onto that bot side as well, and it looks like they might even go for a dive.
Yeah, Houston with greedy pathing has to flash away. Cleanse away from M&M as Chains of Corruption about to spread, but it looks like he didn't want to be caught with his pants down. As we look at the bottom lane, onto Jackpot, it's already begun to turn around as Hollow is moving down as well. This is a Divine Sunder at Jax now. And even though there's going to be double objective bounty here for Impunity, mid did go down, as you said, Nightstar. Bot is getting threatened. And so for Impunity, it's something, but it's only a start here, as they're still trailing gold massively.
At the very least, when you look at where this gold is going, it's going on to the most impactful champion in your composition. It's going on to the Azir. He now has his mythic completed. There are, it feels like, some windows of opportunity possibly with this extra damage coming through. Unfortunately, Annex not quite there yet. Didn't go for the Kraken Slayer, so doesn't have that extra damage to try and shred through some of these chunkier targets like the Mumu, like the Trundle with the Subjugate, and also the Jax with his own ultimate. So it's going to take him on the Varus a lot more time before he's able to do damage to these bruisers.
There's going to be a lot of damage done to him. You talk about the Jax, Wise Cam is almost 2 items strong as well. As we look towards the next dragon, this is going to be number 3. Frank Esports can secure, but Impunity are in the river first here, Nightstar. And clearing out Vision, doing the due diligence, but Jackpot almost engaged on it. There's the pillar yet again. Keres jumps back in. Once his ulti gets a 2-man. It's onto the tank targets, though. A chance for Impunity as Alex goes into the gauge. His clone is the only thing stunned up as Hollow subjugates Wisecam, ready for the counter-strike. But now Jackpot in for the ulti to re-engage, and Hollow getting targeted up, but the Leona in first. Again, Impunity. Not enough damage seems to be the recurring theme. Taking a 5v5 at this point in the game. Without those picks working out, Frank Esports given the 3rd dragon and more gold.
Hysterics! This is what we were talking about, the communication issues. Why are we using all our cooldowns on a subjugate Trundle? He is just way too tanky at this point in the game because of those extra stats he's farming off of that Sejuani, and they end up losing their tank. Now it's just such an easy dive here.
Okay, we do it again. Yeah, you just said, you're right, easy, the perfect word. Impunity right now. We talked about the bubble at the end of the regular season. It is looking like that still stands strong with Frank Esports making a wash of this opening game of the playoffs.
So we see the replay here. Houston, he wants to try and get onto the back line, but as a result, he really overextends himself, puts him in a position where his backline aren't able to do anything in response, so they're just taking free damage at the front line, and then the re-engage comes down onto Hollow. That is not the target you really care about in this composition, and they just easily mop up afterwards. It's Callisto with an absolutely shattered team fight situation. That is exactly where she flourishes.
And it's not even just him, right? I think Pretender's been pretty quiet considering that he's been the backup. He's doing so well in lane, 200 CS at 19 minutes in, but almost a second item for him as well. Like, Pretender's follow-up damage in those AoE points have been pretty big, as Impunity now going to drop the Herald towards mid lane, but look at Frank Esports moving into position. All it takes is carries with yet another great engage, and Impunity will be caught out with the layer of CC. So we look at Impunity not being able to get the mid turret, and Nightstar, we have to look at the next objective. There is a Baron at 30 seconds. There is a Frank Esports that hold control on the Rift. Impunity maybe trying to set up for a pick, but we've seen about 4 plays in a row now with Impunity starting it that haven't worked out well. So we're going to hope for the perfect layering of CC this early on.
Yeah, and the other thing is, for Impunity, they pretty much have to 5-man death ball at this point in the game, because they need the numbers advantage to be able to generate picks. So as long as Wisecam half shadows his team, makes it so that he's close enough to rotate over, if they do get engaged upon, if the situation diffuses, there's no one that's going to cut him off over on his way to the lane. So he can be really, really aggressive with his pathing to these side lanes. He can take camps on the way over. So it's just constant Impunity resources being drained away by Frank Esports, and that's why we see this this gold lead still continue to pile on, even though there hasn't been a ton of kills since then.
I mean, it's just been, as you said, the taking away of jungle camps, but also just taking away some of these objectives where we look at Frank Esports with 4 turrets taken in the first 20 minutes of the game. 7,000 now the lead, an Infernal Soul in 2 minutes for the taking as well. And we now have double attack speed item on the Kalista. Eminem just finished his Renan. So in these team fights that we've seen the bundle up thanks to Amumu, it is going to be hell if Eminem gets the free hit yet again. I mean, Nightstar, he's 2 levels over Annex. And this is kind of what we're talking about. Like, Frank Esports have 3 carry, 3 different lanes. Any game, it can be any other stepping up. And this time, it's Eminem who's going to be in the spotlight.
And on top of that, look at Hollow's inventory. He's got himself a Knight's Vow.
Oh,
he knows his job is simply to just make sure Eminem cannot die.
Yeah.
And that is the perfect setup to do so. He definitely has a linked up, and you look at the Victor build has gone for the Lich Bane, more auto attack focus, knowing that hey, there's going to be multiple cooldown rotations because of how tanky the front line is over on the side of Impunity. And this is exactly the situation that's been playing out time and time again. It's 5 people in the mid lane, so Impunity, they're only farming 1 lane, and for Frank Esports, they're putting their attention to 2.
YSKM has teleport as well, so it won't ever matter. I mean, the wave's pushing into the inhibitor turret, and here's Hollow with a pillar onto the camp that is well and truly watered by Frank Esports. Impunity stay grouped up. The next wave's coming in bot. Someone needs to react. YSKM probably laughing as they negate the engage. Eminem is already there. He's been hit with the wall. That's a great setup. The AoE all in, and Eminem is down. But in that AoE, the Fate Call still comes out, and Apex is now down. YSKM is jumping on the back line, and Kerry setting that all up. The dunk down from Pretender and YSKM. We get ourselves a Frank Esports continuation of pain.
And it's just gotten to the point where, hey, you might be able to kill our Kalista, but it's sort of beyond her point in the game now. All of a sudden, you have to deal with this Victor who has the completed 2 items. Mid-late game Victor, that's his sweet spot. And he comes out with a triple kill because of how many resources they invested onto securing the kill onto Eminem. Just gives them so much free time, churn out spell after spell. We get to see the replay. It's honestly a great pick onto Eminem. The issue is this pick comes, 4 minutes too late. They get the shuffle. It's a great chain of CC to get the kill, but look at Pretender, he's still full health. He's just constantly churning out these siphons. Time and time again, the extra move speeds, just dogging them down.
As we come back to live, I was oohing about a bit. The damage from Pretender is going to be massive. Everyone clubbed up like the dream fight of a Victor. And Infernal Soul's given over. I saw double TP when we went to the replay, but it must have been maybe Jackpot and Apex actually coming in, but having to back away. Frank Esports with the reset in time, and now there's an Infernal Soul. This game is as good as dusted, and from Frank Esports start to finish, it has been all about them. Impunity decided to fight on their terms that early on, and they've been punished heavily as now the base is going to be in tatters. What do you do here, Nightstar? How do you defend this?
Yeah, I think they really have to just make a turn, go onto YSKM, try and get a pick right here.
Okay, well, that's good, but he's still alive. He flashed away, and everything in the kitchen sink. Alex is following up. He's out again. Impunity committed. Everyone through mid. We talked about the team's coordination is now onto Houston. He's next up onto the chopping block. A 3-man ulti from Carries, and now Pretender follows in the club. It won't be a pentakill, it won't be a quadra, but it'll be Frank Esports making Impunity look puny in the start of this playoff series. All it took was this Kalista first pick and Frank Esports putting the pace on, and Impunity didn't know what to do.
Impunity, there's just no early game fight in them. They conceded way too much over to the side of Frank Esports, and Frank Esports, they just say, thank you very much, we'll take game 1. in a no-sweat fashion. 16 kills to 2 Hysterics. There wasn't even a whimper coming out for Impunity.
I mean, that's why the whole team went for Frank. You know, no one has gone Impunity here at all. And all the issues that we're having in the regular season have popped up yet again. Let's be real. You know, Frank Esports, we know that this aggressive team. But for Impunity, as you said, the early game has been one of their biggest issues. They bring out Azir, Varus, a front-to-back here Nightstar. And they try fighting so early on. Like, you don't have any damage. There's no damage out of Impunity. I don't know what they expected.
Yeah, this was... You could see the idea, hey, all of our champions have CC into their kits. We can all make our own plays. They didn't make any plays. They had that one play around the dragon where they shuffled in the it wasn't the Leona, it was the Mumu, and they didn't get the kill. And after that, it was just like, where is our engage? We have so much CC into our kit, but no one's pulling the trigger. It's all on our Azir for some reason to make a play. And he's our damage threat. Because our Varus is so far behind, he doesn't do damage. Why are we putting our strongest carry into the most precarious situation?
I think I think there's a lot to adjust there for Impunity, right? You know, we saw the aggression the first, second Dragon. We saw Impunity, you know, trying to contest around the Herald, but more so, I think we saw the lane swap, and we saw the Impunity losing so much out in the lanes that hurt them. But yeah, I mean, we go on forever about Impunity and how they play this draft. I think the biggest thing is that for Frank Esports, we saw the adaptability, playing towards Eminem, playing towards bot side. Hollow controlled space so well, and Nightstar, what we saw is YSCam was willing to play weak side in this game and waste time here from Alex, who wasn't able to get a gank in that top side, a gank at least that mattered, at least by the 15-minute mark.
Yeah, and the big thing here for Frank Esports is when you pick one of these tank top laners like the Sejuani, YSCam knows at a certain point in the game he will just win out the 1v1. He doesn't need resources, so he's willing to give some of that up, allow Eminem to be the big early mid-game carry they need, and then eventually, you know, he's Jax, he will win against the Sejuani, and that's how it pans out. The Sejuani's forced to group up, continually give up EXP and gold on the side lanes. And when we take a look at the draft, I think it really just comes down to Impunity. They need a better jungler. It's not this Wukong pick who can have strong team fight situations, but they don't need team fights. They have team fight all across the board in that composition. They need something that can actually get them a lead in the early game, and that's just not what the Wukong can necessarily do.
Yeah, I mean, you can see like lanes as well that had CC. You know, we look towards bot lane. Okay, bot lane's being controlled by Hollow. The response is top side, but YSCam played so well in the Jax matchup, so no other corresponding lanes to be given. And we look at this again. Frank Esports is so good at setting up their counterpunch.
Yeah, and for the side of Impunity, we see them just constantly fishing. They land the ult onto Hollow. Unfortunately, that wasn't the target they wanted, and you can see the carries in Eminem and Pretender. Full HP, untouched, well, they can just deal max amount of damage. They don't have to care about the possible extra range coming in from a Azir, from a Varus in that situation, as we get to see the one sort of good fight or good moment they had. But once more, you see that the issue is we're putting Apex all the way into the backlane. He has to flash for that pick. And that's also your strongest member. Annex, how many autos is he really able to get in this fight? It's not a whole lot. So the main part of your damage had to come from that Azir, and he was never in a position to actually do so.
It's another good point, right? Like, you pick the Varus into a Jax, into a Trundle, and a Mumu. I think we saw that Varus was picked red side third pick, so you already knew it was a Mumu, Kalista, and Jax. And at that point, you know that the matchup is like all three champions give you such a threat. You don't have your Brom, you don't have someone that can play super defensive and help you play your range 3 game. So I don't know. For Impunity, we can also look at the way they drafted in this game as, let's be real, this was a slaughter. This was a stomp. Impunity had no chance in this game, and Pretender getting so much damage. It was only a 25-minute game, so 19k damage is almost
kind of bonkers.
Towards 1,000, a minute, right? Not quite there, but still, hell, that's pretty nuts.
Yeah, and when it comes to MVP, it's probably not Pretender, even though he has that big damage stat. It really comes down to either Hollow for his early game movements, or Eminem, or maybe even the Mumu, because he had some pretty good ultimates in that mid-game portion to really just put the dagger into the game.
You know what? Or we go back and we think someone's like, let's just give it to the person with the most damage. So many times in the LPL, it's just been, biggest KDA, biggest damage always gets MVP. I hope PCS changes my opinion a bit. Let's go. Come on, PCS. Don't let me down. Yes, you're right.
Woo!
Supporting staff, 100% kill participation, by the way. A really big early game from Hollow. And we talked about the supporting staff for Frank Esports. Coming into today, the reason why these carries are so big, and Hollow shows up in spades in game 1 to support that fact.
Yeah, and coming into the playoffs, I actually had Hollow ranked pretty low among the top 6 of our seeds when it comes to their junglers. And in the CFO series, he really stepped it up a notch. He made a lot of plays happen. He ganked pretty heavily on even a pick like Wukong. And in this first game, he controlled the tempo start to finish. Alex never had a say in what was going on in this game.
Again, on the Wukong, wasn't able to do too much, and less be it about the pick, more be it about Apex and, excuse me, I'm going to say the whole of Impunity, really. Options limited, Impunity, let's see what changes, because we're going to go to a break and hope that there is a response here for Game 2.